If you're crazy for classic comedy or just crazy for Barry Michell like me, we've got a special treat for you. Honk if you love the Marx Brothers.
Well, the kids must know what their daddy says. Alex, do you know what your daddy said? Oh.
Arthur Harpo Marx, born New York City in 1888. On stage and screen, the nonverbal, horn-honking member of the legendary comedy team, the Four Marx Brothers. Still part of the comedy conversation today.
He spoke, and he spoke a lot. For many people who knew them, he was the most beloved Marx brother. For a guy who was known on screen for being completely insane, Harpo was the sanest man in Hollywood.
And speaking of Harpo,
I'm Robert Bader. I'm proud of the recently published book, Speaking of Harpo, which I co-authored with Harpo's wife, Susan Fleming Marx.
In a series of recorded interviews that began in the mid-1990s.
You couldn't help loving Harpo. Harpo had a unique personality. He was real. He wasn't reading from the script.
Maybe you first discovered Harpo Marx in a 1955 episode of I Love Lucy, the mirror routine.
Which I didn't know at the time was a recreation of something from their film Duck Soup.
Right, with Groucho as Groucho and Harpo as Groucho.
I get confused even thinking about it. I Love Lucy ran in syndication forever, it still does. So many people first saw a Marx brother by watching I Love Lucy reruns, and I was one of them. The Four Marx Brothers were the most successful act in vaudeville. They went to Broadway, they went to Hollywood and became movie stars, and they became the most iconic comedy team of the golden age of Hollywood. And to this day, they are still revered. They're one of the most well-remembered comedy teams in the history of show business.
Robert, among today's comedians, who do you think is most influenced by Harpo?
There is no performer who can do all the things Harpo does. There may be the occasional silent comedian. You can take a look at something like Penn and Teller never speaks. You've got Mr. Bean, can be in many of those situations. It would be like Harpo. Rowan Atkinson is a very good comedian, but he doesn't play the harp. But his influence is really profound in animated cartoons. Because the surreal aspect of Harpo is perfect for animation. He's incredibly physical, he's running all over the place, he's making noise, similarly with the Roadrunner and Coyote. Guy comes up to Harpo and says, "Hey buddy, can you help me out? I'd like to have a cup of coffee." And Harpo pulls a steaming hot cup of coffee out of his coat. That's the thing you see in a cartoon.
Susan made a number of Hollywood films in the early 1930s. Yes, that's her with W.C. Fields. But acting, she could take it or leave it. So when Harpo proposed, she gladly quit to start a family.
I loved making family because I hadn't had one.
She grew up an only child with parents that traveled around a lot. She was unable to have children, so they adopted. And they adopted 4 kids, and she was just the happiest mother in town. She didn't need to work in movies, she just wanted to be a mom.
Robert and Susan never finished writing her memoir, and Susan died in 2002. But recently, Robert revisited the manuscript.
During the pandemic, as something I might be able to do to keep myself out of trouble while I was locked in my house.
And with the blessing of Susan and Harpo's oldest son, Bill Marx, Robert finished the book.
I think any Marx Brothers fan should read it, and it's also an interesting book for widows. She was much younger than Harpo, and when Harpo died, she never wanted to remarry. And it's really a love story that continues up until the day she dies.
Speaking of Harpo by Susan Fleming Marx with Robert S. Bader. And now available in paperback, 4 of the 3 Musketeers, Robert's comprehensive look at the Marx Brothers' pre-Hollywood vaudeville and stage career. And thank you Tavern 29, East 29th Street off Park Avenue, for hosting us today. Barry Michell, Arts in the City. Hi, I'm Barry Michell. Carol Ann will be here in a minute. Carol Ann?
No.
You said you'd do this.
Fine. That is our show for today.
Oh,
Thanks so much.
No. As Harpo with the horn. Very nice.